It's strange how a single sentence can split your life into two clean halves, the before and the after. Mine came on a warm July evening, when the sky still held onto the day like a secret it didn't want to share. I had just stepped out of my parents' house, cheeks aching from so much smiling, heart full from so many hugs. Our annual family reunion had just wrapped, all the familiar voices still echoing in my ears, my sister's booming laugh, the clink of glasses, the soft shuffle of my dad's old slippers on the porch. I had always loved those gatherings, even though they could be chaotic and occasionally dramatic. They were my tether, a reminder of where I came from and who I was still trying to be. That night, I felt full in a way I hadn't in a long time, loved, anchored home. That is, until I glanced at my phone. I wasn't even checking it for anything important. I just wanted to transfer some money for groceries I'd picked up on my way over, just a quick login to my bank app before the drive back. I expected to see the usual, my emergency fund, my carefully budgeted envelopes, the little treat-yourself account I'd been slowly growing for a solo trip to Italy. What I saw instead nearly made me drop the phone. Zero. Every account. Not a cent left. I blinked hard and refreshed the app. I even rubbed the screen like that would change the numbers. Still zero. And that's when the blood in my veins turned to ice. "Everything okay?" a voice asked, smug and syrupy. I turned slowly and found Jack, my brother-in-law, standing there with his arms crossed and the faintest hint of a smile pulling at his lips. His tie was loosened, the buttons on his shirt undone just enough to scream, "I'm comfortable here," like he owned the place. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My fingers were trembling around the phone. Jack chuckled, actually chuckled, like this was amusing. "We needed it more than you," he said, with a shrug so casual I almost thought I'd misheard him. "Excuse me?" I finally managed, my voice hoarse and small in my throat. He looked me dead in the eye and said it again, clearer this time, like he wanted to make sure I didn't miss a syllable. "We needed it more than you." I should have screamed. I should have thrown the phone or slapped the smug right off his face. But instead, something in me stilled. Not calm exactly, more like the eerie hush before a storm makes landfall. I reached slowly for my bag, keeping my gaze locked on his. My fingers brushed the zipper, but I didn't open it yet. I just stared at him. And in a voice so low it was almost a whisper, I said, "Then you won't mind what's coming next." He blinked, confusion flickering in his expression, but I didn't stay long enough to watch it bloom into panic. I turned and walked to my car, my heels clicking against the driveway like a countdown. Inside the car, I finally let the fury unravel. I wasn't angry that they'd taken the money, no. That was too simple, too black and white. I was enraged that they thought they could. That they believed, deep down, that I was just some faceless source of endless support. The one who always paid the catering deposit early, the one who didn't mind footing the bill when someone's card mysteriously didn't go through. I'd become their safety net without ever realizing it, stretched so thin under the weight of their needs that I'd forgotten to keep any thread for myself. And now they'd cut it. I drove straight to my apartment without music, my thoughts loud enough to fill the silence. When I walked in, I dropped my bag by the door and collapsed onto the couch. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come, but not now. Right now, I was planning. I pulled up every recent transaction on my phone. Transfers, payments, wire authorizations. I traced the digital fingerprints of betrayal like a crime scene investigator. The biggest chunk, nearly $20,000, was marked as family fund, which I'd set up for emergencies, vacations, and major milestones. I thought it was safe. I thought everyone understood it was for us, not just them. Apparently, I was wrong. What made it worse, what made my stomach twist with something darker than hurt, was that my name had been listed on every transfer. My sister's name. My cousin Leo. Even Jack. And my mother, God bless her, had probably co-signed it all without even bothering to read the terms. My generosity had become an open bar, and they'd all taken shots until the bottle ran dry. And now it was my turn. I opened a new note on my phone and typed the title in all caps, Operation Clean Cut. First step, freeze every account. Second step, audit every joint expense. Third step, find a damn good attorney. And the fourth step, well, that was going to be the most satisfying of all. I was going to let them know exactly what they'd stolen. Not the money, that could be replaced. No, they'd stolen my faith in them, my belief that love and loyalty were reciprocal, my sense of safety in my own family. And I was going to take it all back. Not quietly, not kindly, but with the precision of someone who'd spent her whole life making sacrifices. This time, I'd be sacrificing them. The strange thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just wound, it reconfigures everything you thought you knew. It reaches into the architecture of your relationships and rearranges the beams. It turns comfort into tension and love into a liability. That night, after discovering what Jack and the rest had done, after hearing those words, "We needed it more than you," I didn't sleep. I sat upright on my couch, my body wrapped in a blanket, but my mind ice-cold, wide awake and methodical. I didn't cry. There was no time for tears. Instead, I made lists. Names, dates, transfer amounts, passwords I needed to change, accounts I needed to close. And most importantly, I mapped out the web of access I had voluntarily granted my family over the years. Credit cards, vacation funds, that trust I'd set up for emergencies after Dad's health scare 3 years ago. Somehow it had all become their playground. I had made myself their lifeline, and they had quietly turned me into a bank with no vault and no security. And they weren't even sorry. By the next morning, my plan had grown teeth. I contacted my lawyer, Alicia, who'd helped me draft the fund agreements when I first started offering financial help to family members. I knew I had baked in some form of accountability. I always did, but I needed her to comb through every clause and locate the pressure points. She said she'd get on it immediately. She'd always been fond of me and had warned, more than once, that my generosity might one day be weaponized. I hadn't listened then. I was listening now. When I showed up at my parents' house later that evening, the tension in my body had crystallized into something hard and focused. I wasn't there to explain myself. I wasn't there to plead for understanding. I was there to take note of who would double down and who might, just maybe, wake up. The house was still humming with laughter when I walked in. Jack's stupid laugh was the first thing I heard, bouncing through the hallway like a drunken echo. They were all gathered in the living room, the aftermath of the reunion scattered around them like confetti, half-eaten pie, someone's abandoned purse, a wine bottle tipped slightly on its side. "Oh, look who's back," Jack said, smirking over the rim of his glass. "Change your mind? Or just wanted to make a scene?" My sister snorted, tossing her hair over one shoulder. "God, Sarah, it's not like we robbed you at gunpoint. You're always so dramatic." "Please," my cousin Leo chimed in, still wearing his reunion t-shirt like it was a badge of honor. "You make 6 figures. What's a little family help?" Their laughter was cruel, calloused, and a little too confident. I stepped into the room with slow, deliberate movements, my heels echoing sharply on the hardwood floor. I didn't respond to any of them. I just looked at Jack, really looked, and I let the silence stretch long enough for him to start shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "You always thought you were the smartest one in the room, didn't you?" I said, my voice low and calm. "So sure you'd never have to pay for what you take." He rolled his eyes, looking to my sister for backup. Here we go. Saint Sarah with another guilt trip. But before the rest of them could join in with another round of sarcasm, the entire house jolted violently with a deafening bang, a sound so loud and sudden it felt like the walls themselves had cracked. The wine bottle fell off the table and shattered across the floor. Before anyone could react, the front door slammed open with the force of a battering ram, the wood splintering in sharp bursts. In the space of a heartbeat, the room was flooded with black-clad figures moving in perfect synchronicity, FBI agents, weapons drawn, shouting over each other with commands that cut like glass through the stunned silence. "Everyone on the ground, now. Hands where we can see them." There was screaming. My cousin Leo dove under the table. My mother stood frozen, her face drained of color. My sister clutched her phone like it might shield her. And Jack's face went pale as snow, his cocky smirk vaporizing into panic as the agents surrounded him. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. In fact, I took one slow step forward, just enough to lean down and whisper directly into Jack's ear. My breath brushed his cheek, and I watched his eyes widen with something he didn't know how to name yet. "I warned you," I whispered, my tone colder than the metal cuffs already tightening around his wrists. He stuttered, his lips barely forming the word. "What did you do?" I straightened up, brushing imaginary dust from my blazer as I turned to one of the agents and offered a tight, practiced nod. "I'm the one who filed the financial misconduct report," I said clearly, loud enough for every person in the room to hear. "You'll find everything you need in the documentation I provided: bank records, fund transfers, falsified applications for government aid, and, of course, the shell company Jack created to funnel money from the family account." One of the agents met my gaze with quiet approval. "We've been tracking the activity for months. Your files helped us connect the final dots." Jack shouted something behind me, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to see his face. I had already memorized the look of a man who thought he'd won. And I would never forget the moment he realized he hadn't even been playing the same game. As they pulled him out in handcuffs, past the shattered door and the stunned expressions of our so-called family, I sat down in his chair, crossing my legs with deliberate ease. No one said a word. And for the first time in years, the silence felt like power. The house, once full of careless laughter and wine-soaked smugness, now hung in an eerie quiet, broken only by the sharp rustle of movement as zip ties locked wrists behind backs and boots shuffled across the hardwood floor. Shards of the shattered wine bottle glittered like fallen stars, scattered across the carpet where so many self-congratulating toasts had been raised. It would have been beautiful if it hadn't reeked of betrayal. Jack was the first to recover from the shock, but not with grace. He twisted against the agents holding him, his voice raw and venomous as he spit the words like they were acid on his tongue. "You set me up," he howled, the veins in his neck bulging as his face flushed an ugly shade of red. You ungrateful little traitor. After everything I did for this family, you sold me out to the feds." I didn't respond right away. Letting Jack spiral in front of everyone felt strangely poetic. My mother lay on the ground a few feet away, her face contorted with disbelief more than fear, her fingers twitching against the floor like they still expected her to wake up from this nightmare. My sister whimpered something unintelligible, mascara streaking her cheeks as she stared at me like I was a ghost she didn't recognize. Leo had completely shut down, his forehead pressed to the floor like if he didn't look up, the reality of the moment would simply dissolve. Jack lunged again, even restrained. "Tell them the truth, Sarah. Tell them this was all a mistake. You don't know what you're doing." One of the agents shoved him back down with clinical precision, his voice flat. "That's enough." The tension in the room thickened, but the silence that followed didn't last long. The lead agent, a tall, broad-shouldered man with storm-gray eyes and a voice that could cut glass, turned toward me, expression unreadable. I nodded slightly, giving him the cue we'd agreed on weeks ago, and that was when everything truly broke apart. "Thank you for your assistance, Agent Miller," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "We couldn't have completed this operation without your testimony and embedded work." I could hear the collective gasp even before I turned to look at my family. It hit them all at once, the recognition, the implications, the unraveling of every assumption they'd ever made about me. My mother's voice broke first. "Agent, what?" The words hung there, fragile and disbelieving, and I finally allowed myself to stand straighter, the years of pretending peeling off my shoulders like an old skin. "I work for the Bureau," I said, meeting each pair of stunned eyes in turn. "Officially, I'm a financial crimes specialist assigned to investigate fraudulent business syndicates and offshore laundering networks. Unofficially, I've been embedded for the past 3 years, right here, among you." I let the truth settle like ash in the silence that followed. I was tasked with tracking a growing criminal empire, one that used shell corporations, charitable fronts, and insider connections to launder millions of dollars. And unfortunately for all of us, that empire had a name attached to it that led straight to Jack. Jack screamed again, but this time it sounded hollow, frantic. "You lying witch. You don't work for the FBI." You're just bitter because you weren't part of the plan. You're jealous. You always were. I turned to him then, not because he deserved a reply, but because I wanted to look him in the eye when I said it. This was never about jealousy, I said slowly, carefully enunciating every syllable. This was about justice. And unlike you, I know how to play the long game. The lead agent stepped beside me and added, "We've confirmed over 40 wire transfers routed through fake construction projects under Jack's name, as well as tax fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy charges. You're not getting out of this one, Mr. Harper." The air in the room was suffocating now, thick with disbelief, betrayal, and something I hadn't expected, guilt. My sister, still on her knees, looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You're lying," she whispered, shaking her head. "You've always been the good one. You would never do this to your own family." I sighed, not out of anger, but from the weight of everything I had held in for too long. "I never wanted to," I told her gently. "But you all chose your path. You chose to stand by Jack, to let him leech off me while pretending you didn't notice the way the numbers never added up. You chose convenience over curiosity, silence over suspicion." My mother tried to speak then, but nothing came out. Just a soft whimper. Her pride had been the loudest thing in the room for years, but now it had gone eerily quiet. I felt my knees begin to tremble, not from fear, but from the gravity of the moment. Everything I'd worked toward for years, the long nights poring over spreadsheets and bank records, the gut-wrenching moments where I questioned if I was betraying people I once loved, it was all here now, in the cold echo of handcuffs and broken illusions. And yet, a flicker of doubt rose quietly in my chest. Had I gone too far? Had I lost something in the pursuit of justice that I could never get back? I pushed the thought away, but not before it left a shadow. Because no matter how right I was, no matter how justified, I had shattered something. Something familial, something sacred, even if it had already been fractured long before I arrived. As the agents began escorting the handcuffed figures out of the house one by one, I stood still in the doorway, watching. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply watched the pieces fall. And when Jack turned back for one final scream, eyes full of venom and wrists bound in steel, I didn't flinch. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being dragged under. The wind outside howled like it had something to say, something old and unrelenting, as if the house itself could feel what was coming. The agents had cleared the rest of the family out, my mother, pale and silent, my sister, still whispering denials no one heard, Leo, too stunned to form words. But Jack remained, still cuffed, still fuming, his body shaking with rage and disbelief as two agents stood behind him, holding their positions by the broken door. I stood across from him, unmoving. My hands were steady even though my chest felt like it was full of broken glass. My face must have looked emotionless, but inside, emotions were colliding like crashing waves during a hurricane, grief, fury, and an ache that came from remembering too many birthdays, too many holidays, too many Sunday dinners where I'd swallow my instincts just to keep the peace. "Sarah," Jack said, his voice hoarse now, almost ragged. "You don't have to do this. Look, I messed up, okay? But we're family. You don't throw your own blood to the wolves." That word family came out of his mouth like it still meant something, like it hadn't been trampled on and chewed up by years of deception and manipulation. His lip was trembling now, not with sorrow, but with desperation. It wasn't remorse in his voice, it was fear, the kind that only sets in when a man realizes the game he thought he was winning has already ended without him. "You're reaching for a lifeline that doesn't exist anymore, Jack," I said, my voice calm and sharp like a blade honed over years. "You don't get to use the word family like a shield. Not after everything you did to it." He shook his head, his voice rising as panic crept into every word. "You think I'm the villain? I made mistakes, sure, but I did what I had to do. For them. For all of us." "No," I replied, shaking my head slowly, feeling the weight of every year I had spent covering his messes, both financial and emotional. "You did it for yourself. You used us. You used me. He lunged forward suddenly, restrained only by the agents behind him, his eyes wide with something between fury and confusion. You want to talk about betrayal? Look around, Sarah. Look what you did. You turned us in. You destroyed this family. For what? For your career? Your ego? You think that's justice? I didn't flinch. I took one slow step forward, enough for him to see that I wasn't afraid. Not of him. Not of his words. Not anymore. You want to know what real betrayal looks like? I asked, my tone quiet even, but soaked in venom. Let's talk about the woman you married. His expression cracked, just a flicker, a split-second twitch of the mouth. He tried to mask it, but it was there. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice faltering for the first time. I let the silence stretch just long enough to let him feel it. The weight. The unraveling. Your wife, I said softly. My sister, Claire. He blinked. What about her? She's the one who contacted the bureau, I said, watching his face as every drop of color drained from it. She tipped us off. Gave us the first breadcrumb that led to your entire operation. She told us everything about the fake charities, the offshore accounts, the shell companies. All of it. No, he whispered, shaking his head like a child refusing a bedtime story. You're lying. I'm not, I said, stepping closer. I didn't want to believe it either, not at first. When she reached out to me through our secure line, under a fake name, no less, I thought it was a trap. But then I recognized her voice. And I realized that even she couldn't stomach what you'd become. He looked like he might be sick. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His entire body slumped, and for a moment, I almost saw the man he used to be. Not the criminal. Not the liar. Just a broken brother who'd built a life on a house of cards. She did it for your daughter, I said quietly. For Ava. She didn't want her growing up thinking this kind of life, your life, was normal. Still nothing. His hands were trembling now, the cuffs rattling like distant thunder. He stared at the floor like it held all the answers he'd never asked for. And then I let it pour out, all of it, the words I had carried for years like stones in my chest. You lied to everyone, Jack. You stole from Mom and Dad. You forged Leo's name on documents that ruined his credit. You let me pay your debts while you vacationed in Belize. You made me believe, us believe, that we were helping you survive. But you weren't surviving. You were scheming. He opened his mouth again, but this time I didn't let him speak. I was the one who sat with Mom when she couldn't pay her medical bills because you drained the family fund. I was the one who held Ava when Claire broke down, terrified that the FBI might arrest her by mistake. I'm the one who stayed up every night, knowing if I didn't find a way to stop you, someone else might. Someone less merciful. His eyes finally met mine again, and they were hollow now. Not angry. Just lost. Why didn't you say anything? He whispered. I did, I said, stepping back. You just never listened. You never thought I'd stop cleaning up after you. The lead agent nodded at me, signaling they were ready to move. They pulled Jack gently but firmly toward the door. He didn't fight this time. He just stared straight ahead, eyes glassy, lips slightly parted, as if his whole world had folded in on itself. As they led him away, I stood in the foyer, arms crossed, watching him disappear into the night. The wind had died down. The chaos had passed. And for the first time in years, justice didn't feel abstract or theoretical, it felt real. The night had finally quieted, but it wasn't the kind of quiet that brings peace. It was the kind that creeps along the edges of your thoughts, whispering that something's not done yet. The kind that knows how to hold its breath right before the next blow lands. From the porch, I watched them haul Jack into the back of the armored vehicle, his feet dragging slightly as though some part of him still couldn't believe this was happening. His face, once so smug and confident, was now a twisted storm of fury and confusion. But even now, even with cuffs biting into his wrists and lights from the transport vehicle casting harsh lines across his face, he didn't go quietly. You think this ends with me? He screamed, his voice echoing down the driveway like a final curse hurled into the dark. You think you've won, Sarah? You've only kicked the hornet's nest. You have no idea what you've started. The doors slammed shut before he could say anything more. Just like that, the man I had once trusted like a brother was gone. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt like all those sleepless nights, every lie I'd swallowed, every file I'd decrypted in the middle of the night while pretending to be the clueless, dependable sister. It should have been worth it in this moment. But as I stood there alone, with the wind tugging at the hem of my jacket and the smell of scorched betrayal still thick in the air, I only felt hollow. Because even when justice is served, there's no joy in watching someone you once loved fall apart. There's no satisfaction in knowing that the roots of your family tree are rotting from the inside out. And I think some small part of me had hoped, desperately, foolishly, that he'd be sorry. That he'd look me in the eye, even once, and say he regretted what he'd done. Instead, he left me with threats. I was about to turn back into the house, to breathe for the first time in what felt like hours, when my phone vibrated sharply in my pocket. 3 short buzzes. Coded, urgent. From the one number I'd never ignore. I pulled it out and answered immediately, my voice low. Miller. The voice on the other end was clipped and serious, with none of the dry humor I'd grown used to. Sarah, listen carefully. This isn't over. We just intercepted a data drop, encrypted, anonymous. It links Jack's transfers to a higher-tier account we didn't have eyes on. I swallowed hard, dread knotting in my stomach like a slow, burning fuse. Who is it? There was a pause on the line, and then my handler's voice dropped even lower. We're still working to confirm the exact identity, but initial traces lead to someone with diplomatic clearance. Someone in DC, someone who isn't used to losing. Whoever it is, they already know about you. We picked up chatter 5 minutes ago. You've been flagged, Sarah. You're being watched. Be careful. My breath caught in my throat. Watched by who? I don't know yet, my handler replied. But you need to move. We're initiating phase 2. Go dark. We'll send coordinates. The call ended before I could say another word. I stood there frozen for a moment, the phone still pressed to my ear, the chill of that final warning sinking into my skin. Suddenly, the quiet didn't feel so peaceful anymore. I turned slowly, scanning the porch, the house behind me, the shadows shifting at the edge of the tree line. A light flickered on in the neighbor's window. A branch snapped somewhere down the hill. I heard the faint hum of a car engine that didn't belong. Paranoia or instinct, I didn't care anymore. I moved quickly, walking back through the ruined front door, stepping over the scattered remains of broken glass and half-empty glasses. Everything inside looked like a snapshot from an interrupted celebration. Plates still full. Champagne half-poured. Laughter cut off mid-sentence and never resumed. I went straight for the lockbox I'd hidden under the kitchen sink, keying in the passcode with shaking fingers. Inside, my burner phone was still powered off, the emergency envelope of IDs still sealed, the flash drive with the final copy of my personal logs untouched. I packed them without hesitation. Whatever came next, I wouldn't face it unprepared. As I zipped the bag closed and shouldered it, I paused for one last glance at the kitchen table. The same one where, years ago, we'd laughed over birthday cakes and spilled cider. The same one where Jack once toasted to family forever while quietly building a criminal empire behind our backs. That table had heard every lie. And now it heard the truth. I took a deep breath and stepped out into the night, letting the door swing shut behind me. The sky above was clouded, moonlight dimmed, and the air carried that heavy, electric charge, the kind that always came before a storm. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. But I wasn't safe either. Because this wasn't just about Jack anymore. This wasn't just about one man's greed or a family's silence. It was about something bigger. Something still coming. I glanced once more over my shoulder, just to be sure, before disappearing into the darkness, knowing full well that someone, somewhere, was already watching. And as I walked away from the wreckage of what once passed for love, the final words echoed in my mind like a promise I hadn't asked for, but now had no choice but to keep. If family can betray you once, imagine what they'll do next time.